have Andrew Martino, the owner and operator of Ghost Truck Kitchen. It's a restaurant in Jersey City, New Jersey, that's really built to handle takeout and delivery. Andrew, how's it going this morning?
It's going great. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So let's start with your background. How did you find this passion and desire to open up a restaurant?
Uh, I'm crazy is the short answer. No, I've always been attracted to hospitality. Cut my teeth in college. Working at a bar because it was a fun atmosphere and it was social, but I was still getting paid. And I truly just fell in love with hospitality. So I made the decision to make that my career against the advice of some family members, and really pursued and wanted to be the best at it. And that kind of led me to back in 2016, 17. I was doing some research for some private equity individuals, and then I had a personal client who was getting involved in food tech, and I just kind of see these two worlds mending and just like coming together. And I was doing a lot of fast casual research when fast casual was everybody wanted to be like the blank Chipotle style, right? Oh, it's the Indian Chipotle, it's the Italian Chipotle. Like that's all everybody wanted to do. And there was tons of dollars being thrown that way. And in my research, mostly in New York, I just saw a lot of empty seats. I saw a lot of blank real estate, a lot of bags going out for delivery, and a lot of confusion around that process. So my mind was just like, all right, how do I do this the right way? What would be like an ultimate takeout restaurant experience? And that was kind of the thought process for how we started Ghost Truck Kitchen.
That's really interesting, and you're right. As I think back, everything is based off of Chipotle and kind of how I think it was McDonald's that just really streamlined that experience in such an interesting way. I'm thinking about the restaurant industry and just thinking about innovation, right? Innovation isn't the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about restaurants. Compound the pandemic and there's takeouts left and right. We don't have this. As you were thinking about starting your business, what was kind of your calculation of this is moving from a experiential kind of restaurant experience business to more of a e-commerce like takeout? How did your love for hospitality, how did you reconcile that?
Yeah, so previous to being in New York, I was in California. I was in San Diego for 4 years. And during that time I was in San Diego really coincided with a huge rise in minimum wage. So labor was a really, really, really big deal in California. How do you manage your labor? There's not a bartender or server tip minimum in California. So these labor costs were real and they were challenging for businesses. So it hadn't really hit back to the East Coast yet. So it really started off thinking about like, okay, labor is harder to come by, which means great service is harder to come by. So people are generally going to dine out and they're not having these great experiences that they want to be having. So in my mind, I just kind of realized, all right, this world's going to split into two different things. There's going to be experiential dining where like the service is incredible, the food is high end, and like you're going for a celebration or a special occasion, or there's just going to be like utilitarian, which is just like, I need food. I want it quickly. I want it to be good. And I want there to be value there. So you kind of need to fall into one of those two buckets. And I think there was a lot of businesses that were getting stuck in the middle. So I just started to lean really hard into, all right, how do we make like the best takeout experience possible? How do we make the best takeout food possible? And again, when I was doing this, it was a really, really small niche that like me and maybe three other operators in the world, gave a crap about. And then the pandemic hit and literally any person that had a restaurant or was restaurant adjacent all of a sudden was like pivoting into, this little world that I had created, which was at the same time really cool because now the conversation switched to something that I was an expert in, but at the same time, very scary because now the competition was going to be fierce. There was a lot of money coming into it. So it really tested out, our concept to see if it would really work.
That's that's a really interesting point, because you're one of the innovators in the space, and I have to ask you, just in terms of the tactical nature of kind of this podcast, is how did you convince yourself to like take this leap and say, I think this is going to work, um, and not pivot too quickly?
So having a background as a hospitality consultant, I've helped owners and operators many times before open up new concepts, help things. And the biggest thing that I always tell them is like, you need to give things time. You need to have conviction in what you're doing, right? If something doesn't work for 90 days and you're ready to switch, then how much did you really believe in what you were doing in the first place? It takes time for your audience to understand what you're doing, especially for me, right? Very unique concept, confusing name. Is it a food truck? Is it not? Is it a ghost kitchen? Is it not? Mistakes that I've made in the past for sure on the branding aspect, but really just having conviction in what you were doing. I just believed that, again, the world was going to shift. I didn't know the pandemic was going to come, but I just saw the changing of the guard, right? It costs more to live where you live. Your entertainment costs more than it did before. People are spending more time than ever at home. And this is before the pandemic. So all these shifts were already happening. The pandemic obviously accelerated that. And then the last thing I'll say is just a little bit of luck and support in my world, which is, my wife has a steady, stable job that I knew that I could rely on when things were challenging for me. And they were, right? It was really hard to get off the ground. It was really hard the first couple of years. And if she didn't have a stable, steady job that could help us, I probably wouldn't have done something so quote unquote risky and taken this chance. So it was really, again, like timing has to be right. The support network has to be right. And then it's always a leap of faith, right? There's always a leap of faith. You're never going to be positive that what you're going to do is going to work. So you just kind of have to believe, and also believe enough that if it does not work, that you can pivot and you can figure something out once you've given it that honest try.
Dude, I love that. So I want to go back to when you started. You've got this concept. You've kind of figured out, your niche, your lane. What was your first action?
Was really trying to find a space. For me, like, it all starts, even if you're a ghost kitchen or a takeout concept, like, it really starts with like, where are you going to be located, and like, where are you located, and what does that say about the brand? And that was a really challenging decision for me, especially because as ghost kitchens now are more popular, right? Most of them have decided to like go be in industrial areas away from people because the rent is really cheap, and then like bring in. I made the conscious decision not to do that because, again, I'm a hospitality person. So I wanted to be a part of the community. I wanted our customers to be able to walk in the front door, us to see their faces. Now, still 75% of our orders are delivery, but we have an activated space where people could come in, we could sample them on food, they can try things, we can chat with them. So real estate was definitely the first thing. And then, of course, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is always money, right? How are you going to afford to do this? How are you going to support things? How are you going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for that? And that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, was raising the amount of money necessary to even get this small 900 square foot operation off the ground.
So if you don't mind, can we explore kind of your experience and your journey with fundraising? Like, where did you start, and kind of what was a lot of the internal dialogue that you had with yourself in that process?
Yeah. So again, having been a consultant for people who have opened and operated restaurants, I'm always imploring them, like, you need more money than you think. Don't go into anything undercapitalized. It's the quickest way to failure. Yet I found myself way undercapitalized as I went to open. So I hit every route. I I started reaching out to banks. I started to see what the SBA process was like. I went through the entire SBA process. There's a small business organization in Jersey City that helps you along. And let me just say, there are two things that banks don't like: unproven business models and restaurants. And I was doing both of them, right? So it was pretty much hard nose for the most part from a lot of different organizations. I had some personal savings, which I used to start. Pretty much like most of my life savings I used. I was kind of all in. I was able to secure a loan. And this is a warning for everybody on the loan process. So I was approved for a loan at a certain number, and I based that budget off that number and made plans and everything off that number. Well, what I didn't realize is that that needs to go through underwriters and X, Y, and Z and multiple approvals. And by the time that final check was actually cut to me, I got about 65% of what I thought I was originally going to be getting. So that really was a challenge. I ended up doing a Kickstarter campaign before we even opened the door, just to make sure that we had enough, money to get our doors open. So, again, it was hard. It was hard for the first, honestly, couple years. I didn't pay myself for our first 2 years of operation. Even when we had money, it was going back into the business to buy something, fix something, do something. So yeah, fundraising is hard. You definitely need to start earlier than you think. You need to try to raise more money than you think. You need to talk to more people than you think. So yes, you're going to be underfunded unless you get really, really lucky and try to figure out how to make it work. And again, that was part of my model too, was like, we didn't have a lot of overhead, right? Like small kitchen, small staff, manageable business, so that even when we had bad months, it's different than running a bar or a nightclub. When you have a bad month, you could lose $50,000 in a bar or nightclub, right? We're a pretty small operation, so the downside of what we could lose is a little bit different in that
regard. Right. It's so funny you said, you have the two things that banks don't like.
Correct.
Like what was how did you work through that? How did you process that? Like, what was, I mean, there's one thing to take rejection, but it's another thing to, you went through so many different financing phases. How did you stay resilient?
It sharpened the tools, like every time you talk to different people, right? Some have zero restaurant experience or knowledge. Some have some are real estate people, like people have different areas of expertise. So what I did find was, even if people didn't quite understand what I was doing, it was interesting to them. And then they would give me their feedback. So it would like sharpen either the pitch that I had, or like even thinking about ways of the concept. It forced me to like put together super detailed business plans and budgets. It forced me to call around for multiple quotes from people and estimates. So it definitely, while it was a horrible process and not fun at all, it definitely, sharpened the weapons at my disposal, and probably helped me pitch 3 years later, where I have now found an investor who's, involved in the business and is going to help us open up more units. So again, 3 years earlier, pitching and getting told no all the time, and like, this is crazy, what are you doing? To the world shifts, ghost kitchens and takeout and delivery becomes more, more known in the world, and the pitch is sharp. What I need to say, what people are looking for, is easier for me.
Awesome. No, man, that's incredible, because I think one of the challenges is, one, not knowing where to start, but then also, how do you deal with that first no? And I think taking that and trying to convert it into proper feedback, and as you said, sharpen your tool, I think is really, really, really smart and good advice.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the business, right? There's the race to get to the starting line, right? And all that you described is just getting to open. What was the first day like? What were some of those challenges?
Opening for me, again, this is more based on my experience. That was kind of the easy part. I'd been through a lot of restaurant openings. I'd opened up at that point probably 8 or 10 different venues over the past 5 years, and all massive, like live music, nightclubs, full service restaurant and bars. So I felt really comfortable getting ready to open because I had done it so many times before. The real challenge, to be honest, was the fear of like, it's like, what if no one shows up to my party, right? Like, it's one thing to have like a restaurant and bar and like you can host and have a big friends and family and grand opening. Like, we can fit about 10 people in our restaurant in the front,
Yeah.
So how do people find out about us? Now we're underfunded, so we don't have a marketing budget, right? So
Mhm.
like, how do we get the word out? Are we going to sell any food? Like, all of those things start to become real concerns. Thankfully, again, I think partly because of the Kickstarter campaign, we were able to get some love in the community, and able to open up with, nothing crazy. There wasn't lines around the block. Like, some people are like, oh, our first day we had, there was a line. We definitely never had a line down the street. It's been a slow and steady process build, but I didn't really ever feel the squeeze once we opened the doors. It was everything beforehand. And I talked to a lot of prospective restaurateurs or aspiring restaurateurs, and like, everything they talk about is the food and the menu. And they get really insulted when I tell them that like, the food doesn't matter. Like, it's really the easiest part. And like, if you have great food or not great food, like, it's probably not going to be the make or break. It's all the other
Yeah.
things that go along with having a restaurant business, right? Did you make the right real estate choice? How much money are you spending? Like, what's your staffing like? What's your level of service? You're on, like, the food is the easy part. It really is. And I think most people get caught up like, oh, I'm a great home cook. I make this great deal. I want to open a restaurant. Like, the food is easy.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit because the more we talk, I'm realizing kind of this time as being a restaurant consultant was invaluable to you, right? Because I've heard this before, similar to your sentiment. In the restaurant business, operations is what'll kill you, right? So, and we're in a world where there's so fewer barriers to entry, right? There's, technology is really making things a lot easier. In some ways, it's making it a little bit harder. But your brand as a business is becoming much more important. And so, talk to me a little bit about how you became a restaurant consultant. Like, what made you want to go into that business? And I think you've already highlighted how it's helping you, but like, how do you get surprised by what you learned in the past every single day with the problems you're doing as an entrepreneur now?
Yeah. Great question. So this was all really in California. Um, I had I had taken a job with a restaurant group, um, below where I thought I should be at, right? So I came and I was, running a big restaurant and nightclub in New Jersey, but no one really cares in California, right? So, I took a job with a good company, was able to move my way up quickly. I was really underpaid and overworked, was like the reality of it. Uh, I was doing a lot for this organization. Didn't feel like I was appreciated. Talked to the ownership several times about my desire to help more and grow more, and it kind of fell on deaf ears. So I decided to leave without having another job, which was unlike me because I'm a little bit risk averse. And fortunately, I've been kind of doing a side hustle the past year while I was in California, and it was a really stupid side hustle, which was I don't know if you know what a secret shopper is, or a mystery shopper. So
Yeah, yeah.
basically, so I was doing secret shopping for a really small company, basically like one guy, but all his secret shops were at like pretty high end places. So like I was in La Jolla at like the nicest restaurant, like rooftop bar, and for me, like, I got paid $50 and my drinks and food was reimbursed, and I felt like the king of the world, right? Because it was just like fun. I enjoyed it. And I really got into the writing and the reports and like detail. And that actually like slingshotted me to the front of the line in helping this company with other big accounts, and all of a sudden I started doing like hotels and resorts. And the gentleman that ran this company really ended up being a mentor for me and helped me start my own consultant business. And he helped me like negotiate my first contract with a client, which was basically to be an interim director of operations for another restaurant group and help them open several units. And things just kind of exploded from there. So definitely having the support of someone who did it before, like finding a mentor. And I can't say I was looking for one; it just like happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, wow, this guy is like super knowledgeable. How do you get to be like that? And then just got involved and like did as much as I could do. Like, all right, cool. Like, hey, I need someone to go to Mexico to do like this resort hotel for a week. Cool, I'm there. I need someone to go to Miami to do this. I need someone to go to Hawaii. So I was traveling and I was working, but having fun while I was working and just soaking up everything I could possibly learn. And that's kind of how it started off.
That's incredible, man. That's the one I'm sitting here thinking, man, I should be a secret shopper. I think that it's kind of cool. Yeah. I would imagine it feels like king of the world. Your food and drink is paid for and you just got to write about it, right?
Yeah, and you get to bring a guest usually too. So like in my single days, it was like a great dating thing. Like, oh hey, do you want to go? Like, so I'm not paying anything out of pocket. Get to hang out. Like, the person you're with thinks it's like a cool thing. So it was a good experience. And again, I just have a love for the business. Yeah. And I've done so much operationally. I've been on the floor in restaurants and nightclubs and music venues since I was 18 years old. Yeah. So doing that for 10 plus years and then transitioning to director of operations, more of a exec level positions where you're overseeing people. That was really invaluable, and understanding like how the financial aspects work and reading P&Ls and like all these different pieces that you don't necessarily understand when you're a floor manager or right. A bar manager or even a general manager sometimes. And I'll say this too, all of that experience, everything, right? Written checks, I've budgeted, nothing compares to when it's your own money and your own place. Right. So like you think everything, but it is a very different story when every dollar is your dollar, and you need to pinch pennies to make it work, to make sure you're making payroll, and the pressure of other people's livelihoods being in your hands. That's very different from being a high level operator or manager to actually being the owner of the business. So that was kind of a little bit of an intimidating thing for me too at first to get used to. It was like, that kind of felt pressure for me. It was like, these people are counting on me. My staff's counting on me because I'm the one that's providing for them and making sure that them and their families are getting fed.
Right. Did you feel, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have this, experience this pressure. Did you ever find yourself burning out because you were trying to do too many things? You were trying to play too many roles?
I can't say I ever hit the point of total burnout. I definitely did not sleep a lot. I still don't sleep a ton, but it was definitely, my mind was always racing. Like my mind was always working. You're always like have multiple balls up in the air. You're wearing multiple hats. I think I can handle that well, just because again, I'm used to it a little bit, and I'm used to that fast pace and what that's like. But it is daunting. There are definitely like nights when you want to just like crawl up into a ball and full on cry and like whine. But that's kind of part of the entrepreneurial journey, like there's definitely been times in the same day where I've been like on cloud 9 elated, then an hour later been like, oh my God, my life's over. And then 2 hours later been like, oh, this is great. Like, so it's the roller coaster. It's 100% real. And you kind of need to learn to deal with those things in a steady manner, right? You can't get too high off any of the wins. You can't get too low off any of the losses. You really just kind of got to try to maintain focus on a point that's a little bit further down the road. And I think that helped me as well, as thinking like, I always had the big picture in mind. It wasn't about just this one location. It was about figuring out a system and a process so that 3 years from now or 5 years from now, like we can repeat this and open up multiple locations. And I was always kind of planning for that and had that in the back of my mind. And that always helped to make the day-to-day things seem like a little bit smaller, knowing that there is a big picture going on behind it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm curious, just kind of hearing you speak about your experience, your background, and your passion for hospitality and your experience as an owner now. Um, you seem very passionate about the operations and how things run. And as you said, you coach or you kind of talk to a lot of new restaurateurs, and they're all about the food. Do you think that there's a different success rate in those that are passionate about the process, and those that are just solely focused on the food?
I think there probably is.
Hmm.
I've never thought about it like that, but I think it's a really good way to think about it. If you meet seasoned operators, especially of successful chains and corporations, which is not what we want to be, but there's a reason that they've made it that far.
Right.
It's generally because of the systems they have in place, the processes they have in place, um, basically the formulas of how to make a restaurant run profitably and the numbers you need to stick to and hit. Uh, I think the smaller you are, and if you're a chef owner, food can definitely drive your business 100%, especially if you're doing something like amazing and outstanding. Um, but as you grow, and if you're not the person that's in the kitchen every day, or you want to work on the business, now what happens is the food falls off because you're no longer the chef in the kitchen, and all of a sudden now like the restaurant isn't what it was before. And that's, I think, what we see a lot, right? Places open, they're great for a year or two, and then they need to grow or expand, or the chef doesn't want to work 90 hours a week anymore, and things start to decline and degrade. So, you know don't get me wrong, our food is fire, and
Right.
like everything tastes great and is awesome, and we cook from scratch and we do stuff in takeout that no one else is doing. But again, like, we have a system in place to make sure that it's consistent and make sure it comes out the same way every time. And like, we have a system to make sure the food stays hot when it gets to you, and the process is right, and the food cost stays where it needs to be so we can be profitable. So again, it's all of those things need to be firing correctly in order to make a restaurant work. That's why restaurants are like a very, very complex, simple thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like a very easy thing for a lot of people. They're like, oh, restaurant, how hard could it be? And the truth is, it's like it's one of the hardest things imaginable.
Yeah. It's What I'm the similarity I'm seeing is like, in tech startups, right? You usually have the business founder and you have the tech person. And I had never thought about this until really kind of learning from this conversation. There might even be a similar dynamic, right? Um, Tell me a little bit about your experience about finding help, right? Building these systems, getting this restaurant into place. Like, how did you find help?
I'm still looking. The truth is, like, right now, that's my biggest thing. I'm looking for help for me, because we want to grow and expand. And again, I realize that I can't be in multiple places at once. So being able to find that other person or multiple people that can help us grow is paramount. On our staffing side, right? As someone that started for me as a prep cook is our chef manager of our location. He's our employee number two, and he's awesome and helps run 80% of the day-to-day operations. And I think it's part of just like attracting your tribe, right? Like whatever the phrase is now, or like you put out
Yeah.
your, like, I'm an overly transparent person. um I try to treat everybody just like an equal. Everybody, we're all on the same page. We're all adults. I think, that helps bring in other people that are like-minded. So our staffing situation, day to day, has been good,
Mhm.
and steady. And I think a lot of it, again, has to do with like the culture that you create, which is, I've been the busboy, I've been the bartender. I know exactly how it can feel sometimes. So just making sure that people realize that they're appreciated, treat people with respect. I'm a former basketball coach too, so I used to use this term a lot, which is, I treat everybody fairly. I don't treat everybody equally. And it's just like a really important thing, you know. People are different. They have different ambitions, different motivations, and figuring out what those things are and what drives people is really important. So now I'm on that search on the executive level, which is only a couple of weeks in. So a very timely question. And it's challenging, right? It's challenging to make a commitment to someone, to find out like, how do you know that they're going to be good once, you know, like things are actually going. So I can't say that I have that one solved yet, but again, I think being yourself, putting yourself into the business and hoping that that attracts the same type of person when they're looking into your business. I don't think, you know, a lot of people front, you know, a lot of people say what they think they should be saying or say what they think people want to hear. And like, it's just never going to end well. So again, just being overly transparent with what we're doing and who we're looking for, and letting things kind of take care of themselves a little bit.
No, man, I love it. That's awesome. I hope we find the right people. I what I found in my conversations is the biggest hurdle is living with the fact that the person's not going to care as much as you do. He never will. And I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's hard. It's really hard, especially when it's your own money, your own time. You're not taking a salary, and you bring someone on who, again, you're going to be treating fairly as a partner, and they don't have that same fire. I'm curious to circle back with you on how you address that challenge.
Me too. Me too. And again, I think it's different now because of where we are versus where we were. You know, even in like just the world, when I meet people now, right? I can tell people what we do and most people get it and it clicks. Whereas like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when I was telling people about the idea and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do a virtual food truck lot. People are like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, you like, and they didn't understand it. Like, do I put on VR goggles and like, is it like a restaurant experience that like, you know, like it just didn't click. People had no, you know, like just thought I was a little bit crazy. I'm sure there's still some that feel that way, but now again, I think because of the pandemic and the acceleration of so many of these different ghost kitchen type models, you know, it's really easier for people to grasp now than it was.
I think it's so when we first kind of met and had our first conversation, you educated me a little bit about kind of the ghost kitchen model, and I kind of did some research, and I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. And my business mind went, oh, this is the evolution of lean business in the restaurant industry. Oh, this is complete. It makes perfect sense. But as I think about the concept of a virtual food truck lot, it's I think it's another evolution of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't just a food court of a bunch of different restaurants that are in here. This is a single restaurant coming with multiple concepts that may not make sense on one single menu. But because I have multiple menus, I can still be a lean business, but then satisfy the different needs and the different perspectives of my customers. Is that a fair?
I think that's very fair. I think that's exactly right. You know, like I just want, this is a good anecdote. So we did a catering for an office yesterday, 75 people, and they got a vegan bowl platter with like turmeric coconut rice, jerk tofu, and seasonal vegetables, smoked wings, Asian hot noodles, Mediterranean vegan Greek farro bowl, carrot cake, and empanadas. So like, I don't know another restaurant that's going to bring all of that and all of it be great.
Good.
Yeah, you know, so like again, you almost think about it as like the modern evolution of like a diner, you know, of like, instead of breaking it down into these categories, right, we've broken it down into concepts that we can operate, and 100%, that's why we're going to continue to be successful, is because we've built up trust in our, what we call our parent brand, right, GTK, and that whatever goes in underneath concept wise, like people trust and they know it's going to be good, and we're not trying to trying to fool people into thinking like, oh, where's this brand coming from? And like,
Right.
whose kitchen is this getting cooked out of? Like, no, this is getting cooked out of our restaurant. This is what we do. We're a concept of concepts. And again, I think we're just trying to bring that trust, which I don't think a lot of people have right now in the ghost kitchen space. It's like, where is that Mr. Beast burger being cooked? It's like, oh, it's being made out of like, Olive Garden, or like, whatever it is. Like, oh, IHOP is making these wings that are being, like it doesn't equate when people look into it a lot of times. So, we want to bring transparency and have people feel good about where their meal is coming from.
Yeah. So let's talk about this innovation in this space, because I know this is something that you're passionate about. When I think about the benefits, the pros, the amazing kind of lean attributes that this provides an industry that was already very difficult and margins were already very tight. So this is a great opportunity. On the extreme, I could see it being a plug and play model where it's like, get as many restaurateurs into this one kitchen, and it's really not about the hospitality. It's not about the experience. It's not about anything that any of the pillars that, being in the hospitality or restaurant industry is based off of. So I'm interested around your thoughts around on like, what's the downside of this innovation? Because I know that you're already thinking about it, which is pretty incredible, because most people that innovate don't think about the negative externalities. So interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, so there's two major ones I think that a lot of the bigger players are experiencing right now, or have experienced already and are pivoting out. The first is, restaurants are hard, right? Even these smaller standalones. So there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of things that happen. So if you're these cloud kitchens, we call them, it's essentially like a WeWork model, right?
Yeah.
And that could work nice if it's always fully leased and there's not turnover and all these places are doing well. But the reality is, it's very hard to get traction online digitally for your food concept. So a lot of these operators don't make it. They last 3 months, 6 months. This exact thing happened with Kitchen United, which is one of the major players. They were only taking up small restaurateurs to their sites, and they were constantly having open space and turning them over. So they decided, you know what, let's move to more national or regional tenants that are a little bit more steady, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, you've cut out independents, and now you're moving to like more bigger regional chains. So the next thing is the food quality, right? So inconsistency wise is really challenging. So the way to get around that is, well, when you ship frozen, prepackaged, pre-processed food, it's going to be consistent, but there's no nutrition, there's no nutritional benefit.
Right.
Doesn't taste very good. So like in your example of chatting about the lean and efficiencies, right? The closest thing is it's really to like e-commerce and a fulfillment center. So you basically have like kitchen fulfillment centers. And I think you lose a lot of what makes restaurants special. Like, people care, and that's why food tastes good, and that's why like you have a good experience or something. When you put cooks in a 200 square foot kitchen with no windows, like, it's not exactly an environment where people are going to be putting out inspiring food. And I guess that's okay, right? For some of these business, if you're Wendy's, or like a 1,000 degrees, like if you're a pizza place, like, all right, you can probably get away with that. But for independent businesses and chefs, it's really a challenging model, and it sounds really good, but it's not really good. And I think there's a lot of people that have been burned by these models. And then if we want to, we can touch on the dangers of the data side, which is, I'll use them for an example because they're doing this now. So DoorDash is obviously a very large company. They have raised a significant amount of money from both sovereign wealth funds and individual investors. For 10 years, they have data points on every single meal that they've sold, right? Who it's being sold to, what time, what price point, what the menu description is, all those things, what people are searching for, what they add to their cart, what they purchase, what they don't purchase, right? Very similar to early Amazon.
Yeah.
Now what DoorDash is doing, not dissimilar to what Amazon did with Amazon Basics, is DoorDash is now experimenting with their own kitchens and their own concepts. And they're going to use that data to help
Yeah.
themselves, which
Right.
is what they should be doing. But if
Right.
I'm a restaurateur, you went from a partner to a competitor, overnight. And I think that's the only way that these companies are going to become profitable, is they start to own the entire chain, right? If
Yeah.
they're creating the concepts, staffing the restaurants, sending out the food, delivering the food, okay, now they can sell, you a piece of fish at 4 o'clock on a Friday for $13, because they know that that's the exact price that you would spend on a Friday at that time. Where like they might target me 3 hours later with the same piece of fish because it's 7 o'clock. They know I'm going to pay $17 for it, and like that's kind of the way it's going. So the dangers of independents continuing to join these guys, you're really just giving them a look under your hood. That's all you're doing, is like, oh, does your concept work? Do people like to buy your type of food? Because if so, we're going to copy it and do our own thing with it. So those are some of the dangers. And I think, again, it's really easy for people to understand now because it clicks. It's what happened with Amazon. And then the second thing is what happened with Uber, which is when Uber first came out, it was really cheap. Like, unbelievable. This is the best thing that's ever happened. Holy crap. I just went somewhere. It was like $4. It was $8. It was $6, because it was all being subsidized by investors, right? To gain market share. Now, if you take that same Uber ride 4 years later, 5 years later, that $6 ride is now $26. That $12 ride is now $40. And it's going to be the same thing in food. So while Uber Eats is giving you every single discount you could ever imagine, right? Emails, $25 off, $5 off, free delivery, this, that, right? Eventually that's going to run out, but all the independent restaurants may not be there anymore. And then what do you think happens to the price? Now the price spikes and the food's bad, and there's no other options. So, like, food is not a car ride. Food is not a t-shirt that doesn't go bad sitting on the shelf for 6 months. So they're trying to do to food what happened essentially with retail. And I don't necessarily think it's apples to apples, but they're going to push really hard for it. So it's up to us as consumers to decide how we want to spend our money, right?
Yeah.
Like, do we want to take the extra 10 seconds to call a local restaurant? Hey, how do you want us to order? Love to order from you guys tonight. What's the best way for us to do that? Some restaurants may say, hey, DoorDash, right? We don't have delivery drivers. That's the best way. Some may say, oh, it'd be great if you could pick it up, or we have our own online ordering solution. But we need to make those decisions ourselves in order to avoid what I think could be a pretty ugly future of just a few big players kind of owning every single type of restaurant.
I appreciate you breaking that down, and I have a better, just kind of learning from you, just a better understanding of the challenge. The consultant in me is saying, okay, well, what's the happy medium, right? Like we got the extremes. We can't go back to the way that things were before, right? We may not want to go to the most advanced technologically. I've noticed that there are some restaurants that I order on their own website, but then DoorDash delivers it, or some company. As you mentioned before, it's really about who owns the data, right? And ultimately, I want to own my own data, but I only want the company that I transact with to own that data as well. So in your mind, I'm going to kind of combine this with two questions. What do you think is the future, and what does Ghost Truck Kitchen look like 10 years from now, given that future?
Sure. Well, I'll give you what I hope the future is versus what I think the future is, because unfortunately they're not the same thing. Okay. I think that these large multinational conglomerate companies are not going anywhere. I think they're going to continue to invest in delivery and takeout. I think they'll continue to get better at it. I think convenience will continue to rise. Price will continue to stay steady or fall as they get better and better at it. I hope that more independent restaurants get into technology and realize that they can start their own virtual concepts out of their own kitchens using their own innovation and their own food ideas that may not work with their current menu, but do stuff that they're passionate about. I hope that restaurants take their digital orders more seriously than they are right now, because it is the future. Everything will be a digital order. And for us at Ghost Truck, the first thing we're going to do 10 years from now, we won't be named Ghost Truck. Maybe 10 months from now, we won't be named Ghost Truck. But, I think for us and me, the idea is to get more things to you in one order. So the way I see that is, yes, we definitely want to make your on-demand delivery dinner for you tonight and have you enjoy it because it's a great meal. But also, like, do you need any groceries for you to make breakfast with tomorrow morning? And then also, is there like some cool convenience goods or like a local proprietor of like some CPG product that you also need or you want to sample or you want to try? So I think kind of our evolution is, again, getting more things to the customer in one delivery, one cart, one delivery fee, so that, again, you feel better about your purchase because you got 3 days worth of stuff instead of one night. And then for us, our bag is bigger, right? Instead of you spending $50, maybe you spent $100 because you got X, Y, and Z. And then just to continue on with food innovation, I think, the way that we were set up was to be adaptable, whether some new food trend comes along 4 years from now or 4 months from now, like, we can lean into that. We always want to be kind of on the cutting edge of what we're doing culinary wise, and be a big part of multiple communities. We're a neighborhood takeout business. Neighborhood takeout businesses have loyal customers that, we're part of their staple environment, like, order from them once a week or once a month or whatever it is. Right. That's the type of business we want. We want to be repeatable, sustainable, be parts of the communities that we operate in, and just be a reliable partner for everyone.
That's awesome, man. I hope what you hope the future looks like is what actually happens. I mean, I think, I do believe that there's a place for major companies that serve a specific niche. I think that I think there's value in that, right? There's value in what Amazon does. There's value in what a WeWork does. I think that there's a law of diminishing returns to it, too, right? You don't want to get to the point where it is eating up the other competitors and eating up the smaller operators who have no desire to become WeWork.
Right.
They just want to deliver good value to their community. I think once you start encroaching in that space, that's where, I agree with you. I'd be concerned. So I'm hoping that the defense mechanisms of the small proprietor is strong enough, because I can't imagine that some of these major companies are going to eat less, right? Like, if there's food on the table, they're going to eat it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, again, and this isn't just specific to restaurants. I think if we look at the landscape right now, the insane amount of consolidation that's happening, it's just not great for society. Competition is wonderful, and having these enormous barriers to entry is just not great, and it's hard for any small business to get up and then sustain. And again, that's why we're seeing such insane consolidation, and I worry about that specifically for food, because this is people too. So I'll give you another good example. So there's another tech food startup that's VC backed. I won't name them here, but they're currently giving out $2,000 sign-on bonuses, paying entry-level positions $18 to $25 an hour, and that is wonderful for those people who are able to take those positions. Right. Unfortunately, no independent restaurant is ever going to be able to compete at those levels, because they didn't raise $500 million in order to do this. So, you're starting to see those disparities creep out. And it's kind of the same thing for delivery drivers in a way, which is like, restaurants can't get their own delivery drivers because the Uber Eats and DoorDashes of the world, like they've gamified the system so hardcore that like these guys can make way more money with multiple phones in their pockets, delivering for multiple companies than they could. Like, why are they going to take this single delivery job when they could,
Right.
be taking all of these jobs? So, again, logistics plays into it. Financial backing plays into it, into
Yeah.
the recruitment of it all. So again, I think independent restaurants, it'd be great if we could all bond together tighter than we are. But everybody has different needs and different goals.
Yeah.
The goal of your local tavern is different than my goal, right? They want to drive butts to seats and sell beers and hang out and watch the game, and that's awesome. And we need those in communities. So I don't think restaurants are going anywhere. This isn't like, oh my God, there's never going to be a regular restaurant again. But there are certain communities that aren't in, larger cities that could be decimated by this, right? Decimated by a food fulfillment warehouse that drops into their area and puts 10 local businesses, out.
Right.
So that is a real risk for sure.
Got it. So I want to transition back to something you said about your name, and Ghost Kitchen might not be the same same name in 10 months.
Yeah.
Well, I won't kind of probe you for ideas, but more what goes through that decision, and how did you come to the conclusion that you may want to change your name? Because you've been in business for multiple years now, you've built a brand. Like, that's not a easy decision.
I know. I think it's really a story, right? So when we first came out, nobody knew what a ghost kitchen was. It wasn't even a term. Like it was so generic that like I own Ghost Kitchen page on Facebook, right? Because like nobody knew what that was, and it's just like a generic thing. So when the company first started, it was just called Ghost Truck. Right? There was no kitchen, it was just Ghost Truck. And then every single time I would talk to people, where's the food truck parked? Where are you guys parked at? Right. So I was like, ah, shoot, I can't be doing that. So like the kitchen kind of just got like added on to the logo and the name, just so people could maybe have an idea that it was a physical place. So that was like the first evolution. And now that, ghost kitchens have become more popular, I can't say that I'm in love with the association, as there continue to be more and more problems, whether that's like health inspections, dirty kitchens, unlicensed stuff, that like we necessarily want to be associated with the massive ghost kitchen companies. And also, since we're not a physical food truck, want to maybe eliminate some of that confusion that
Right.
people may have. And that's a lot of what it is like talking to people or having people like reach out to me on LinkedIn or message me and be like, oh, like love your food truck, or like make comments, and I'm just like, well, this is really my fault of the name. So thinking about how we change our name to fit into like what we are and who we are. And I do have a working one, so I'll hit you with it, and I guess your listeners can message me if they like it or hate it. So the idea for us is to keep the GTK, and transition our name to Go-To Kitchen.
Ooh.
So where your go-to, we're always reliable. Oh, that's my go-to spot for wings. That's my go-to spot for vegan. That's my go-to spot for gluten-free, whatever the case may be. Go-to backwards is also to go, which is where we specialize. So being able to keep sort of the GTK vibes alive, and transition to Go-To Kitchen, I think is the move. And I'd be not a good brother if I didn't mention that this is 99% my sister. My sister is brilliant, and she does all of our creative, our branding, our illustrations, the site, everything you see that's like a digital asset, she does. She had this idea of Go-To Kitchen, and when I was telling her, like, we both kind of hate the name now, like we got to figure something out. So very thankful to have her on my team. I could never afford her if she wasn't my sister. So thankful again, sometimes it's about just, your situation. So that's kind of the branding exercise, is me being like, I hate something, telling my sister, and then her 3 months later, when she has some time, like spending a day on it and then coming up with like the most brilliant thing ever, is usually how it goes.
Well, shouts out to the family discount and to your sister. That I love it. Like my mind started spinning. I was like, go to kitchen. Like first, it keeps the same branding in terms of the initials. So that part is brilliant by itself. But I think it does speak to kind of a lot of the values that you've talked about in this conversation. You know, you're a physical location, you care about the community, so you want people to understand that you're going to be a reliable pillar within the community. You talked about the variety of foods that you can get, so it's not just a specific type of food, it's whatever you need, we've got you. And then I also think that um, as you think about the future in that single order experience of, hey, you know, I need a couple eggs because I got to make eggs in the morning, the idea of, well, just run to your go-to kitchen for it, like that is, yeah, man, I'm a big fan, and I'll definitely through the postings I'll ask the audience to upvote or
Yeah,
downvote what they think.
it'd be good. So you're the first person outside the organization that's heard it. So you know, this is breaking news right
I
now on the
appreciate it.
podcast.
I
Yes.
appreciate it, man. Exclusive, I love it.
Yeah. No, I think
um
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's how we thought about it too, right? It hits you in all the right ways for how we want people to think about, you know, us and the brand, and yeah, nailed it.
Awesome, man. So let's start kind of hit you with some quick hitters or concluding questions. Um kind of what's a couple books that you would recommend to other entrepreneurs that has helped you get to where you are?
One in specific
Okay.
that I at one point used to buy for all of my employees every single time, and that is Setting the Table by Danny Meyer.
Cool.
Uh, that's like my number one hospitality book. The first time I read it, I felt like I was reading myself right because I thought about hospitality the same way. And then there's just like some true gems in there that I still think about to this day that actually drove what Ghost Truck is. And one point in the book is he asks himself like, whoever wrote the rule that, and it's like, so if you have a crazy idea, like whoever said that you can't have
Mm.
12 restaurants in one restaurant, right? Whoever wrote the rule that you can't, and like, I think a lot of times our thoughts get caged in by what exists already. And I think if you start to challenge yourself and challenge what is currently going on around you, you can really have some breakthroughs. And I think that was really helpful for my thought process and thinking was like, well, who wrote the rule that you can't like have red wine with fish? You know, like there are certain
Yeah.
things that were like just in the hospital, those are no-nos, right? You can't do that because why? Right.
Yeah.
And so that was always a good one. And then the other note that I always use from his book is like, you get to write your own ending, which is, you know, in hospitality, it's really hard to do in a digital aspect, right? The food goes out the door, it's at your house. Did we mess up? Did we not? Right? We can't touch your table and let you know. So, you know, we've figured out a few different ways to actually connect with the guest after the food is dropped, to make sure that we can end the story right. So maybe they are unhappy with the experience, but now we can find out about it and I can fix that and make them a customer for life. So like always remembering that, you know, you can write your own ending to any story, is a helpful thing. So that's my number one. If you're a restaurateur or anybody in hospitality, Danny Meyer is truly like a brilliant restaurateur. And you know, I know a lot of people only know him from Shake Shack, but like that's like probably for him, he was probably like, oh, that's the easy thing, you know, like he's done
Yeah.
a lot and really influenced you know, a lot of the hospitality in America today.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm gonna add it to the reading list. I'm not a restaurateur, but just even the concepts you've talked about, I think it'll be applicable. Um, so what's a question that you would ask my next guest?
A question I'd ask your next guest. Probably ask, you know, what motivates you to do what you're doing. you know, I'm always curious as to what people's internal drivers are. So I guess that would be my question.
Got it. So what motivates you to do what you're doing?
Yeah, for me, it's simple. Like I love people and food. And I know we like talked about, oh, the food doesn't matter because I know our food's going to be good, but like that's truly what it is. Like I care about everybody's experience in food. Like I still to this day, like if we mess up something, like I really get upset. Like it bothers me. I want to make it right. Like I don't want anybody to have a poor experience because of something that we did. So again, just like hospitality is always the core driver in my mind, because I want people to enjoy themselves and have a good experience.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. What type of entrepreneur would you be most interested in hearing on the podcast?
What type of entrepreneur? I guess I would probably want to hear from someone who had failed a few times and now maybe has found success in the business. I'm always interested in hearing how like people rebound from big swings and misses and like get back up and do it again, and just like find the confidence to do it again, knowing that like they may have burned some bridges or lost people money or like that's always like I have that fear of like, oh my God, if this doesn't work, like I would feel so terrible. I don't know if I could ever like show my face again, you know, like that sort of thing. So someone that's, you know, been knocked down a few times, but has, you know, gotten back up and found success.
That's awesome. Awesome. That's a really good person or perspective for me to try to seek out. This was a fantastic conversation, Andrew. I appreciate the time. Next time I'm in Jersey City, I will make sure to come check you out because I know the food's going to be good because the food doesn't matter. That's going to be the title. The food doesn't know.
I'm going to get crushed for that. I can tell.
No. But no, I'm excited about what you're doing. I'm excited about your passion. I'm excited about your thoughtfulness about where the industry is going and your role in it. So keep doing what you're doing. And if I can be of any help to you, just let me know.
I appreciate it. No, this was great. It was a blast chatting with you, and definitely set you up for your next one.
All right. Appreciate it. Have a good one, man. Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be helpful, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and share with a friend. If you are an entrepreneur and want to share your story and be helpful to others, just shoot us an email at behelpfulpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.